Thank you, Madam President. I rise to make my contribution to the motion as presented by the leader of government business. Before I do so, Madam President, permit me to congratulate the Soufriere Youth and Sports Council for the hosting of a very successful second annual community sports event at the Soufriere Mini Stadium yesterday. You know, it was a very amazing day yesterday for the council and the people of Soufriere. I mean, you could have seen the enthusiasm, the joy amongst the people and the different athletes and the communities. And I also want to congratulate the winning community of Francis Jacques for emerging victorious and urging them to work even harder next year at when the Youth and Sports Council is going to host the third annual community sports event, Madam President. Madam President, I stand here to say to this honorable chamber that any initiative, whether it is sports infrastructure-wise or sports programming pertaining to the development of youth and sports in this country, I stand in support of such initiatives, Madam President. And similarly, I think I can speak on behalf of the United Workers' Party for our support for any program relating to sports infrastructure and youth development. Sports infrastructure development, Madam President, you're very well aware that at the last administration, we started such a program where we did a comprehensive upgrading rehabilitation of, I believe, 4 sporting venues around the island. I think we did some works at the Sports Academy. There was the Deriso playing field. There was the Mikud South playing field, January playing field, and of course, the very special one, the Soufriere Mini Stadium, Madam President. And those upgrades and rehabilitation, Madam President, was done with grant monies. We were able to use the Taiwanese funds to upgrade those facilities and put them in a position that would make it conducive to our sportsmen and women so that they could give out their best, Madam President. So we are all for sports infrastructure, development, rehabilitation, and sports programming, Madam President. But Madam President, whilst I and we on this side support sports infrastructure and programming, I have a few concerns regarding this motion of guaranteeing of $80 million to the NLA to undertake the infrastructural rehabilitation or upgrading of the facilities, the 3 main facilities, which the leader of government business have alluded to. And I think he made mention of 140 courts, 90 playing fields, and so on around the island. 4 facilities. You said Darren Sami, Grozili, Mindu Philippak. And? Oh, Masha Dennery? Okay. I stand corrected. 4 facilities, Madam President. Okay? So, Madam President, at this point in time, permit me to read out section 3 and 4 of the NLA Act number 27 of 1998. And this act, Madam President, is already a document of the House. So I am going to read sections 3 and 4 of the act. Like I said, this is an Act 27 of 1998 and Act 8 of 2005. Section 3, Madam President, establishment of the authority. There is hereby established for the purposes of this Act the National Lotteries Authority. This is Section 3(1) of the Act. Section 3(2) reads, "The authority shall be a body corporate to which, subject to this Act, Section 19 of the Interpretation Act applies." And I will come to Section 19, which is later on as well. Section 4, Madam President, of the National Lotteries Authority Act of 97. Powers and duties of the authority. Basically, the functions of the authority given to the NLA under this piece of legislation. One, that's subsection 1 of section 4. The authority shall have power to carry out or provide for the operation of lotteries in St. Lucia. A regulatory authority to oversee gaming. Beg your pardon? I'm looking at section 4. 2. Without prejudice to the generality of subsection 1, the authority shall A. Organize, provide, conduct, and control the operation of lotteries in or outside St. Lucia, either alone or in conjunction with any other companies or organizations in or outside St. Lucia, or associate with any other company or organization concerned with the business of lotteries. B. Carry on such forms of pool betting business as may be approved by the minister. C. Make arrangements for the proper and prompt payment of prize monies payable under this Act. D. Promote and oversee public education related to lotteries, pools, betting, and games of chance in collaboration with relevant government bodies. And if you look at A to D, Madam President, all of those functions, those powers, those duties have already been outsourced by the NLA through CBN and CAGE. E. Advise the minister on the development of all forms of games of chance in the state. F. Engage in any activity which is, in its opinion, necessary or conducive to the proper discharge of its functions. And it continues, Madam President, subsection 3 of section 4. The authority shall, in performing any of its functions under this Act, take such action as may be necessary and practicable to ensure that its revenues are at least sufficient to meet all sums properly chargeable to the revenue account, including sums required for the payment of prizes, loans, and interest thereon, and for the establishment and maintenance of its property and its reserve fund. Maintenance of its property. 4. That is subsection 4 of section 4. Subject to the provisions of this Act, the authority may, for the purpose of performing any of its functions under this Act, do anything and enter into any transaction which, in its opinion, is necessary to ensure the proper performance of its functions. Powers, duties of the authority, Madam President. Nowhere in section 4 is mentioned that NLA has the authority to undertake infrastructural development of public assets. Nowhere in this Act, Madam President. Nowhere. Madam President, I am going to go to section 19D of the National Lotteries Authority Act, which is the funds of the authority. And it says that the funds and resources of the authority shall consist of, it has A to E. So I'm going to go through A to E and then I will specify what I want to say on D. Funds arising from the sale, lease, or other disposition of property vested in the authority or from the conduct of lotteries, pool business, or any game of chance. B. Such sums as may be placed at its disposal by the House of Assembly. C. Funds arising from any source consequential upon the performance of its functions under this Act. D, which is where this motion falls into place, Madam President, sums borrowed by the board for the purpose of meeting any of its obligations or discharging its functions. So the board is borrowing the money, but the government is guaranteeing it. In the event of default, it will be charged against the consolidated fund of the state. E, all other sums or property that may become payable to or vested in the authority in respect of any matter incidental to its powers and duties. And of course, subsection 2 of 19, all sums referred to in subsection 1 shall be paid into and placed to the credit of one or more bank accounts approved by the minister. NLA Act of 1997, Madam President. So, Madam President, nowhere in the functions of the NLA Act talks about infrastructure development, talks of gaming, regulatory authority. Madam President, I go further to say that the NLA is a creature of statute. It's created by legislation. And therefore, Madam President, as a creature of statute, the NLA cannot go beyond the functions given to them in this Act. Cannot go beyond it. And Madam President, if you Google in Wikipedia, creature of statute, I can make it a document of the House. Allow me to read part of it. Madam President, a creature of statute, also known as creature of the state, is a legal entity such as a corporation created by statute, meaning created by legislation. Creatures of statute may include municipalities and other artificial legal entities or relationships. Thus, when a statute in some fashion requires the formation of a corporate body, as the NLA, often for governmental purposes, which is to regulate gaming, such bodies, when formed, are known as creatures of statute. So the NLA Act created that. The same concept is also expressed with the phrase creature of the state. It went further to say, Madam President, the importance of a corporate body, regardless of its exact function, when such a body is a creature of statute, is that its active functions can only be within the scope detailed by the statute which created that corporation. I'm going to read this again, Madam President, for you. The importance of a corporate body, regardless of its exact function, when such a body is a creature of statute, is that its active functions can only be within the scope detailed by the statute which created that corporation. Thereby, the creature of statute is the tangible manifestation of the functions or work described by a given statute. The jurisdiction of a body that is a creature of statute is also therefore limited to the functional scope written into the laws that created that body. Unlike most, and has the open close brackets, private corporate bodies, creatures of statute cannot expand their business interest into other diverse areas. End of quote, Madam President. So, Madam President, all this says, when you look at the functions of the NLA, it tells you that the NLA, this legislation, this creature of statute, was not designed to undertake any infrastructure of public assets. NLA can do so, Madam President. Very simple, by amending that legislation. The government could have come here at any time and amend Section 4 with an additional 1 or 2 subsections to give NLA, to give that statute, that creature of statute, the legal authority to undertake infrastructural development on public infrastructure. And again, public infrastructure which it does not own. It was right there in the authority, the functions of the NLA. The facilities which the leader of the opposition have mentioned, have alluded to, they are not owned by the NLA.
Madam President, I rise on a point of order.
What is your point of order, Senator?
I think some of the information that is being presented appears to be misleading. And so what I will do is to explain what I'm saying. Madam President, in my submission...
You need to just indicate what part that is misleading.
As the Senator has, for a while now, been speaking about the function of the NLA not being responsible for infrastructure, but and he is giving quite a background about that. I am just going to make one statement. Now, I can deal with the rest in the rebuttal, but I don't think it is fair to allow him to continue without that particular thing being corrected. It is very clear that this motion is about the NLA seeking getting the finance, $80 million for infrastructure. It has not indicated that the NLA is going to be spending the money. These venues and specific areas that I made mention, the Mindofili Park and all of them, they are not owned by the NLA, they are owned by Sports St. Lucia, Inc. So the function of the NLA is to source the money and manage the funds, as he correctly said, based on the statutes. Their function is to finance, not to go ahead building infrastructure. So I am just saying, Madam President, that what I'm getting from this is that the function of the NLA is out of order from him. And I'm saying again, the function of the NLA from what I have presented is that they are sourcing the money and managing the funds, but they are not the ones executing any infrastructure. These pieces of infrastructure are owned by the Sports St. Lucia, Inc. They have that responsibility. I wanted that to be clear.
Thank you for this elucidation, and I'm hoping in rebuttal you will make the connection between St. Lucia, Inc. and NLA. Please proceed, Senator.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I think the leader of government business is confused. You come in here for motion. The motion, let me read the motion on the order paper, Madam President. Be it resolved that Parliament authorizes the Minister of Finance to guarantee an amount of XCD $80 million, the loan from the First National Bank, St. Lucia Limited, the bank, to the National Lotteries Authority to assist with the financing of a youth and sports infrastructure program. Where does it say in the motion that the NLA is not the implementing agency? So again, transparency, Madam President. Transparency, lack of specifics. It is not in the motion. You gave the explanation after you introduced the motion. You never said which agency is implementing the project. And you're standing on a point of order saying that I am misleading the House. I am not misleading the House, Madam President. I am not misleading the House. If you do not want me...
Madam President, I am forced to rise again on a point of order on the very same point that the member is continuing to mislead the House. He's now saying that the motion does not say who is the implementing agency. And if the motion did not say, then how is he insinuating that the implementation agency is the NLA? Nothing was said about implementation. This is a motion about the government borrowing, the NLA borrowing this money, the government guaranteeing that borrowing for the NLA to borrow money for the financing of projects. That's where it ends.
Okay.
And that is the function of the NLA. I will repeat, this motion has not spoken of implementation at all. So again, I am saying if the member will insinuate that NLA is implementing, then he would be misleading the House.
I think in actual fact, you're both correct in some sense. However, Senator Stanislas perceived what he thought was correct. So it is your part, Senator Gibeon Ferdinand, it would be your responsibility to elucidate during rebuttal, of course, but I will allow the Senator to proceed with his presentation.
Madam, you have ruled, I will obey. But if I may, while I wait to rebut, I think it would be dangerous for the Senator to be allowed to continue to insinuate what he said.
Senator Stanislas has indicated what he has, his interpretation, and he is going to present based on what he has interpreted from the resolution. As I said, in your presentation, you can correct him, but I note your point of elucidation, and you seem to think that he's misleading. So be advised that is what Senator Gibeon has presented now, that he's only about assisting the NLA, and so more information will be provided. Please continue.
Thank you, Madam President, for protecting the minority. Well, Madam President, if he spoke of the, I think, SSI, you said? Central Sports Incorporated. If NLA is not the implementing agency, who is the implementing agency? And why, if the implementing agency is a statutory corporation, why couldn't that implementing agency be the one to take that loan and government guarantees it? Very confusing, Madam President. So, Madam President, based on the motion as presented by the leader of government business, and on my understanding of the National Lotteries Authority Act of 1997, the government, this motion to guarantee that loan for the NLA is ultra-virus to the legislation. It is ultra-virus. The same act you all brought to this House in 1997, amended in 2005, you all are going contrary to what this act is saying.
I want to interrupt you here, Senator. I think the Senator has stood up on 2 points to guide you accordingly.
Yes, Madam President.
So please be guided. Like I said, he'll provide more information, but in the meantime, he has insisted that it's to assist and that they will not be the ones taking on the infrastructural work. So please be guided.
I shall continue, Madam President. Thank you. So, Madam President, I have some more concerns which I would like to continue to outline. The member said that the money is for the upgrading of the 4 facilities, Darren, Sami, Mindo, Philip, Masha, and I think Grozile or Dennery. But as far as we know, works are ongoing at those facilities. Am I right to say that, Mr. Leader of Government Business? Works are ongoing. But today, works have started, what, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 2 months, I'm not sure. I stand corrected. You are coming today for a guarantee. You are coming today for a guarantee of $80 million. And let me make it clear, Madam President. We on this side have no issues with government guarantee. That is part of governance. The government of the day could guarantee loans for any statutory corporation at any time. There is no problem with guarantee. There is no problem with sports infrastructure, upgrading, rehabilitation. But if work started weeks ago, days ago, a month, 2 months ago, why now are you coming to get the guarantee? Is this the fact? Is this another belated guarantee? Is it another belated guarantee? because that is your term, coming after the fact for the guarantee, and you all said it was a belated guarantee. So is this another belated guarantee? Madam President, another concern I have. Again, the leader of government business is running away from the specifics. The cost of rehabilitation, upgrading of the facilities. He just gave a ballpark figure, $80 million. How much is it going to cost for the works at Masha? How much is it going to cost for the works at Grozili? How much it is going to cost for the works at Darren Sami? We don't want to know every little detailed information. You're going to do 100 feet of drains, you're going to do this, do that. No, but give us something. So at the end of the day, it can amount to the $80 million. What is the breakdown? What is the scope of works for the facilities? Are you going to redo the playing surface? Are you going to redo the French drains or whatever? Are you going to redo electrical? What are the stands? What? No scope of works, no information has been given, Madam President. Works have started already. What was the process in selecting the contractors and giving out the works? Was there a bidding process? Was there a tendering process? But I noted he said something to NLA managing funds to reduce bureaucracy. To reduce bureaucracy. So you have bypassed the whole tendering process, which I'm going to come to shortly, Madam President. Madam President, I'm coming to that. Madam President, based on the motion as presented, it is clear that the NLA lacks the capacity to implement $80 million project, infrastructural project. You will have your time, Mr. Leader of Government Business, to rebut and clarify.
That's right.
It is up to you who did not make it clear in your motion. Blame yourself for that. As Senator Lee said earlier in a previous motion, be more specific, and we have called for you all to be more specific, to be more transparent. You refuse to do so. So I am interpreting the motion as I see it on paper, as it is presented by the leader of government business, Madam President. What is the structure of the NLA for this project? What is the technical structure at NLA? Are there civil engineers? Are there QSEs? Are there building technicians? Do they have project managers? What is the structure? What is the technical structure? What is the accounting structure at NLA for this $80 million? Who will oversee the project? Is it the manager of NLA? Is it the chairman of the board of NLA? Is it the coaches? Who is going to oversee it, Madam President? What are the checks and balances? If a work order comes to the NLA for payment, who is going to go over the work order? Who is going to sign off and say X amount of work was done, and I'm signing off that X, Y, and Z can get paid? Checks and balances. Where are the checks and balances at NLA? These are important questions, Madam President. It is not opposing for opposing's sake. It is the duty of the opposition to ask those questions. And it is the duty of the government to come forward and clarify and give us the answers. What is going to be the procurement process? Just a few weeks ago, we came here for a policy-based loan, Madam President, to strengthen the Finance Management Act and the Finance Procurement Act. But today, you are bypassing it.
That's right.
To go for a statutory body. And what is your excuse? To reduce bureaucracy. That is your excuse to reduce bureaucracy. The same policy-based loans you took to strengthen the FMA and the Public Procurement Act, you are going contrary to it. And at the end of the day, you will want to talk about transparency, accountability, good governance. No. Madam President, we also want to know, and I've said it before about the breakdown, no specifics as to how much it's going to cost. But if at the end of the day, there are monies left over or in the $80 million, if, because we know cost overrun is synonymous with the Labour Party. We know it's synonymous with the Labour Party. Okay? If there are funds left, how will those funds be used? How will those funds be used, Madam President? And who determines how those funds are going to be used, Madam President, if any funds are left after the works? Who? Madam President, the NLA, and I stand corrected, currently takes in approximately $600,000 monthly in license fees, revenues, and so on. I stand corrected, Madam President. But from my knowledge, from my information, whilst you were in government, this is a ballpark figure, which I remember clearly that NLA takes in monthly. But based on this motion of the biannual repayment of over I think it is $3.5 million, it means that approximately $595,000 monthly will go towards paying this loan for 15 years. NLA takes in $600,000 a month in revenue. It pays out $595,000 a month on the loan for 15 years. That's the reality. That is the reality, Madam President.
So we have no money left over.
So after this loan is paid, Madam President, what becomes, my question is, my concern, what becomes of the administrative responsibilities of the authority and its commitment to youth and sporting programs? Because before, the NLA was into programming, assisting in programming. It means that with what the NLA is taking in of $600,000, paying $595,000 monthly to the loan, the NLA is left with just about $5,000 a month. How does the NLA pay staff? I'm sure the $5,000 remaining is not even sufficient to pay the manager. How does the NLA pay rent, pay utilities? What is going to be there to assist all the clubs? And he made mention of all the assistance the NLA was given out to the associations, to the youth organizations, to the clubs, to schools, to athletes, the after-school program, which was vital to curb some of the social issues we have amongst our young people in the school system. What happens to those programs? Will there be, how does it, it continues, who is going to pay for it?
Keep going here.
Madam President, the senator is, I don't know. She is confused. She is confused.
Senator, you are to stay focused on your presentation and not to respond to side comments. And by the way, you have exactly 12 minutes to complete your presentation. Yes.
He alone took 5 minutes from me, Madam President. Madam President, these are important concerns. No money for 15 years. And you're telling me they will be able to fund all of this, fund all the administrative responsibilities with $5,000? When the NLA was also supporting the Ministry of Youth and Sports with certain operations and programs? Is there going to be an increase this year in this year's allocation for Ministry of Sports to take care of those initiatives? We'll see about it. Madam President, the leader of government business made mention of those facilities after the T20, the main event, being used for other sporting activities and so on. Very nice. I'm happy to hear that. But I hope that there is going to be a proper maintenance program in place, because we cannot go and spend all those millions of dollars and those facilities are left on their own with no maintenance. Okay? We have to make sure that there's maintenance. Madam President, as I alluded to earlier, Sufra Mini Stadium was one of the facilities which we upgraded during our time in government. And today I stand very proud with what we were able to accomplish at the Sufra Mini Stadium. Despite all the criticism from the members opposite when this project was ongoing, Madam President. Despite all the demonizing of the works at the Sufra Mini Stadium, it was cancerous. But 3 years now, 3 years, the Labour Party have been using, abusing, misusing the cancer facility for 3 years now. So I guess, Madam President, the majority of Suferians and the majority of people in St. Lucia need to go and test for cancer.
Maybe.
You know? I hope not. Because this is what they said. It was cancerous. Even my friend, member for Grosile, once said the Sufra Mini Stadium, Belfleur sans l'odeur. Belfleur sans l'odeur. But today, Flessa qui n'est plus bon l'odeur. Plus bon l'odeur, Sufra Mini Stadium. And with all the usage of the stadium, the mini stadium in Sufra, the leader of government business never said, he only mentioned 140 courts, 90 playing fields around the island. Shouldn't Sufra Mini Stadium be a priority for you all as well? Not $1. You couldn't say, okay, 100,000, 200,000 will go to Sufra Mini Stadium to continue to maintain the facility, to continue with the other phases, Take out the AstroTurf? Well, Madam Senator, go and remove the AstroTurf. Go and remove the AstroTurf. I want you to go and remove the AstroTurf. You know, Madam President, we had another phase of the Sufra Mini Stadium to undertake. We had the pool, the 25-meter 8-lane pool at the bottom, the south end, to put in place. We had the netball court to put in place. We had the works to do in the control room. We had the concession booths to take care of, Madam President. And Madam President, we have a video board sitting in a box in the factory for 3 years. We put in the infrastructure to put the video board. It wasn't before elections. It wasn't before elections. Okay?
Carry on, member.
And it is there 3 years. All the cables, everything, the platform is there to put up the video board. Up to now. And not a dollar allocated to Sufra Mini Stadium. In the $80 million, Madam President. So, Madam President, I have to question this borrowing, this guarantee. I have to question the ability of the NLA to manage and implement this project without the proper structures. And the Act does not give it the authority to do so, Madam President. I have to question it. It is a concern, and I hope that the leader of government business can clarify. Because we need answers, Madam President. We need answers. Madam President, it is said that where there is no structure, chaos emerges.
Yes. Oh yeah, so profound.
Madam President, I pray that the necessary interventions can and will be put in place at the NLA to avoid a disaster with this project. Thank you very much, Madam President, for your time. I think I have used up my 12 minutes. Thank you, colleagues, for your patience. I thank you, Madam President.